Welcome to the Commentary Magazine Daily Podcast. We are in August. It is August 1st, 2024. I am John Podhoretz, the editor of Commentary Magazine. With me, as always, executive editor Abe Greenwald. Hi, Abe.
Hi, John.
And media commentary columnist Christine Rosen. Hi, Christine.
Hi, John.
Okay, a few corrections notes, very important corrections to be made. I have garbled my Godfather references yesterday, so I think it's very important. I've been getting texts and emails all day. I said that Mo Green was shot in the eye in a barbershop, and I still believe that he was in the innards of a barbershop. However, he was actually shot on a massage table, which I believe was inside a barbershop. Nonetheless, I have to say he was shot on a massage table. Barzini was not shot in a revolving door, but rather on the steps of a cathedral. And it was Cuneo, not a Barzini, who was shot in the revolving door. And so these are the mistakes that I made. This is very important because this, of course, is canon text, very important. And I've now made these corrections. I apologize deeply for my errors. And now let us discuss the question that has been at the forefront of the American discussion since yesterday afternoon, which is, did Donald Trump make an error, a terrible error, a career-ending error, an error that will deny him the presidency a second time, in his appearance before the National Association of Black Journalists? And once again, I now wish to issue a second confession, sequel to my first confession, which is that I opined about this on social media before I actually watched his appearance. And shouldn't do that. You shouldn't do that if you're a person in the common American conversation. Like it's lazy and cheap. And something more interesting was going on at that interview than I thought was the case when I reared in horror yesterday at Trump's conduct and what he said and whether he was making a terrible mistake or being evil or being racist or something like that. So before I get into my views, Abe, Christine, you want to sort of ventilate a little bit on how you thought this very, very peculiar event that happened in Chicago at the National Association of Black Journalists went down?
Well, I don't think the question, at least the question for me, is not whether he made a career-ruining mistake here. It's more about, was this just very, very bad, and a very, very bad piece of what seems to now be a trend whereby he looks low energy, unfocused, petty, and is not. I mean, to me, the campaign seems to be falling apart. That's how it feels to me. Now, I'm interested to hear your take on the larger event, but I will say that no matter how interesting or legit the larger event was, the takeaway is always going to be that sort of most glaring clip from yesterday, with him talking about Kamala suddenly becoming black. She used to be Indian. So no matter what, that's what he leaves there with.
Okay.
I actually think there are a couple of things long term from that. First of all, I don't think most people are going to pay attention to this. This is an insiderish kind of event. Journalists are very upset about it, and so that's why we're discussing it and hearing it, and it's going to be written about a little bit. I'm not sure the average voter really cares or even knows there is such a thing as the National Association of Black Journalists. That being said, he did this thing that he often does where he gets into the weeds and never makes the broader political point that he's there to make. So what he got into the weeds with was, well, she used to call herself Indian American. This is true. She talked about being Indian American, first Indian American senator. But she has never disavowed her blackness. She went to a historically black college. So the idea that she's always pretended she wasn't black until suddenly it was politically convenient isn't true. She's mixed race, as many Americans are. So he kind of bungled the broader point I felt he was trying, or maybe was prepared to make, but didn't, which is she's all about identity. And so it's fair to challenge her on her own self-identity, on her own ideas of how policy in the federal government in particular should deal with identity. And she is a very, this DEI candidate stuff, which I think some people in the conservative movement think the Trump campaign should drop. There is a way to talk about her identity politics. She is the person who just before getting elected released a weird cartoon about equity versus equality, where she laid out very clearly that she thinks equality of outcomes is how people and government programs and all kinds of things in society should be judged. She has radical views. So he missed an opportunity to say, she calls herself Indian American here and African American there. And you know what? That doesn't matter. She can call herself whatever she wants. But what she wants to impose on the rest of us is this, that, the other. He could have laid that out. He didn't do that effectively. But I will say, having watched a lot of those clips, those journalists, particularly the one who interviewed him, I think she's from ABC News at the beginning.
Rachel Scott,
right?
Yeah.
She was rude and aggressive, and I know everyone was queening her on social media. I thought it made her look unprofessional with an axe to grind, and I don't think that they came across to an average viewer as brave ladies taking on a racist Trump. They seemed kind of obnoxious. So I think there are going to be takeaways from people that aren't going to be praising their performance so much as going, wow, that was rude. I mean, they seemed kind of rude. Now, I know they're supposed to be tough, but there's a difference between aggressive rudeness and toughness when it comes to asking a political leader questions.
So I'm mostly in agreement. In a way, I'm in agreement with both of you. We can sort of go at this in reverse order. I think Christine, what you just said about what the meta meaning of what Trump was going for was what he was going for, and that he, as is often the case, expressed it infelicitously. Now the question is the infelicity as the liberals were wont to say during his first term, was the cruelty the point? Was he being infelicitous because he wanted to go at this in an ugly way? Because again, with his animal cunning, he wants to inject a question into the mainstream that he can't get them to talk about. So the only way that he can get them to talk about is to go provocative and sound horrible, so that they will say, wasn't it horrible that Trump said that Harris says she's Asian 1 minute or Indian 1 minute and black the next? That's horrible. How dare he say that she plays these different kinds of identity politics cards? He's terrible. He's a monster. And then that fact that he maybe wants people to talk about gets talked about, and he is the villain, but it nonetheless enters the American political bloodstream and becomes an element of the sotto voce campaign against the Democratic and liberal establishments that is, or was maybe in 2016, his particular genius stock and trade. Now, I don't know that that's the case. I do know that he didn't bring up DEI. Rachel Scott brought up DEI, and she said to him, do you think it's okay for people to say that Kamala Harris is a DEI candidate? And this is where
he should have said Joe Biden said it was. He said it himself, but he didn't.
Right. He didn't. But and this is where things got interesting for me watching it after reacting to it before watching it. He was very calm. He did not lose his temper. He did say, you're being very rude. You didn't even say hello. You didn't even, just to be the godfather, you didn't even invite me. What was the last time you invited me in for a cup of coffee? I came to you. You invited me. You were supposed to have my rival here. She's not here. You said I couldn't do it on Zoom. Apparently she's going to get to do it on Zoom. That doesn't seem fair. He shouldn't have. I mean, I don't know why he had to go into that, but basically he was saying, you set me up and I'm here anyway. So, but
he does that. But by the way, he
Yeah.
does that for the same reason a lot of men are in prison, which is he takes far too deeply any wounding of his pride, and then he
Right.
overreacts. So that was a pride. Sort of him expressing
Although
that.
again, he was very calm. He's like, that was a very rude introduction. You're fake news. I came, you invited me, you said I had to do it this way, so I came anyway, and now I see the rules are different for her. Whatever.
He
I'm
mentioned they
here,
were
ask
running
me whatever
late. He's like,
question.
you're
Yeah.
30 minutes late.
Yeah. Then she said, will you disavow basically the Republican attack on Kamala Harris as a DEI candidate? And then he did something interesting. Again, no one's going to notice this because of what Abe said. It's only the larger takeaway. He said, define DEI. What do you mean by DEI? And Rachel Scott said diversity, equity, inclusion. He said, okay, define it. And she said, that is the definition. And he said, no, it's not. Define it. What does it mean to you? And she said, well, what was it? And then he said, look, I don't know how. I've known her at a distance. I don't really know her, but I've known her for a long time. And for a long time, what I thought she was it was Indian. She played up being Indian. Now she's black. First she was Indian. Now she's black. And the audience is whooping in derision and scorn and disgust. And Christine, as you said, she went to Howard University, which is a historically black, I think the preeminent historically black college and university in the United States. And certainly everybody in California, when she was running for office, knew that she was black. She was running in the mold of Obama, literally as a black candidate to be the first black statewide official in California. That was one of her appeals. And also, there's a large, not that large, but there's a substantial Indian American community in the United States, and she wanted to appeal to them. Also, what he injects into the political conversation is the following. DEI is a scam that allows people to play identity politics in the elites to jockey for favor. And so you claim to be DI, and it's a shortcut through a process of getting into a high-level position at companies and politics, whatever. And it's not fair. And therefore, it is part of the corrupt liberal establishment creating rules to benefit them at the expense of everybody else. And that's why he then connected that. And again, I'm not saying that this is conscious or like that this is a developed argument, but he said, so is she DI? I don't know. He said, I don't actually know. To be fair, he said, I don't know if she was a DI candidate or not. That's not for me to say. I wasn't involved in that. But, and she isn't, the term doesn't suit her or fit her precisely because she had to go before the electorate. Like she got elected 3 times or twice in California to statewide office. And that's not a hiring process. She ran as a candidate. So she ran looking for advantages wherever she should get them, like all candidates. And then Joe Biden picked her, and the consequences of making a bad pick, if she was just picking her for DI reasons, are that he could lose the election by picking her. That's a high, that this choice, as we're seeing with what's going on with Kamala and her VP choices and Trump with his VP choice. This is a high risk, potentially not that high a reward, but very high risk decision to make. And DI is actually supposed to limit your risk, not raise it, by eliminating you're getting accused of being terrible things if you do it. Nonetheless, he said, the other things going on in this country is she was the border czar. She didn't close the border. And who are those people coming into this country? What are they going after? Black jobs. And this is where the hypocrisy starts coming in. Because he's not allowed to say black jobs. He's like, whoa. And someone said, what do you mean by a black job? And he said, any job is a black job. If we have 20 million people, and then he said 60 million. I don't know, coming into this country to take jobs. They're going to take black jobs, and you guys should care about that, basically. But you don't seem to. Now,
well, and there's plenty, and there's two other things going on. One is that plenty of journalists use the phrase "black jobs" in their own writing, and these are journalists of all different backgrounds and creeds and skin colors, and nobody for decades this has gone on and nobody's raised a peep about it. But when Trump said it, it became a controversy. But I think what was interesting about the DEI discussion that you're describing is that they were having parallel conversations in a way, because the Kamala Harris campaign and a lot of the journalists at that convention were all talking about DEI as insiders, knowing what it means. You know, they don't have to define it, John. They know what it means. It's a feeling. It's a sensibility. It's a worldview, and everybody's in on it with them. And that's the way, because their industry actually is quite heavily pro DEI, as are a lot of the other elite institutions in our culture. Trump talks about DEI like most people think about DEI, which is like, what is this weird stuff, and why are you? That seems wrong to hire people based on skin color, and we're supposed to be equal opportunity. People don't like DEI when it's actually explained or shown to them as equal outcomes, as dividing people by race. And he was having that conversation in an interesting way. And that's really appealing to voters, including not just independent voters, not just right of center voters, but a fair number of registered Democratic voters who think a lot of this DEI stuff has gone too far.
And where he might legitimately be criticized for playing a race card, he was playing an interesting bank shot race card, because the race card isn't, vote for white people. It is, hey, black people, did you know that Kamala Harris is an Indian?
Right. And he was definitely doing that. He was definitely doing that.
You may not know this, but she's only half black. She's also half Indian. How does that sound to you? Is that what you want? Now, that's horrible and disgusting. But it was going to happen, and it can happen sotto voce inside the black community. And the black people in America did not care that Obama was half white and half black. Maybe they even thought that it was fine, or better, or whatever. I don't know how black people feel about mixed race with members of other. I don't know. I genuinely don't. I come from a community in which, we have a certain level of discomfort at moments with the mixing of Jews and non-Jews because we're a tiny minority interested in perpetuating our people, and that this seems to be a threat. So it's not. Okay.
We do have some data on the African American community. They're about. It's still pretty small. It's something Pew did some surveys of this. About 9% of white people think mixed race marriage is not a good thing, but about 18% of black people do. And that's, but that's from their early teens. Right. So there's a stronger sensibility against it, but it's still it's a small minority of the community who think that.
Right. Okay. So something interesting is going on there that is, if I'm right, and Trump can press some kind of a case about how the Democrats have embraced things like DEI, and liberals have embraced DEI because they're trying to fix the system into their advantage. And what this has is the virtue of being true. It is true. Doesn't mean that it doesn't mean that if you say it in the wrong way, you are not doing something worse than DEI, because you could be inflaming racial tensions in the United States, which is a very bad thing. But DEI inflames racial tensions in the United States in a complicated way. And it is a legitimate subject for national conversation at the presidential level to discuss, is this what we want? Do we want to live as a nation in identity politics? Because the general defense of DEI thinking is that we already do. We live in a nation that is controlled by white identity politics, majority identity politics, and it's not fair, and we're evening the scales because all white people have a natural advantage that people of color do not have. The problem with that argument at the national level in a presidential election is that 74% of the country is white, and people get to vote however they want to in the privacy of the ballot box for whatever reason they choose. They can vote because they don't like the cut of somebody's jib. They can vote because they didn't like his opinions on who was shot in the revolving door in The Godfather. They can vote. They are allowed complete freedom of latitude to choose things however they choose them. And if you're going to push identity politics as a reason to vote for Kamala Harris, white people in this country have every right, in the privacy of their own brains and in the privacy of the ballot booth, to vote against that, or to say don't like that, or to say this is some way of undercutting me or making it harder for my kids to get good jobs or whatever. And
But we're the only.
Yeah, go ahead.
But we're now the only ones having this conversation as a result of this. Like, that's the problem.
Right.
He didn't.
Great. Okay. Go to that, please.
Just imagine that, that was DeSantis up there or something, right? Now, and imagine that he could connect with an audience and imagine a lot of things.
Yeah.
He would have been able, John, to articulate something like what you're saying, or provoke some sort of conversation that was meaningful to someone. To me, Trump went in there, he tried to be, I think he was just trying to be personal in his attack on her. He's trying to say she's a phony. She's a big phony. She used to be Indian, and now she suddenly says she's black. And the thing is, it's so not true, as you've said. As Christine said, she was, and John said she ran as a black woman. She went to a historical black college. It's just so not true that he looks inept more than anything else. And anyway, we're having this conversation about DEI. He could have provoked a conversation about DEI that would have helped him potentially, possibly. That's not at all what he did.
Okay,
well, and this goes to the. I just was to add that goes to this ongoing debate about how he should be attacking her. And there's this, and I'm on the side of go out. If he wants to attack her personally, he should say she believes in nothing. She said all this stuff when she was a senator, all this stuff when she's vice president. Now she's completely leaking, having her staff members leak to the press saying she's changed her mind about fracking. She's changed her mind about this and that. She doesn't. She's there's no there. Like, he can actually attack her individually as having no real convictions and beliefs, and as compared to him. But attacking her identity is not, I think, is a dangerous thing to do if he can't do it well. And he doesn't have the nuance to do that, I think. And people don't like it. I mean, people just don't like it.
Okay. So now I have to put on my where I got everything wrong in 2015 and 2016 hat. Because you guys are making an argument that I desperately want to believe, which is that, as Elie Wiesel said about Ronald Reagan going to Bitburg, this argument should not be your argument. This place is not your place. This is not where we should be going. But maybe we're wrong. Maybe this is an ugly, nasty, low-down country with a nasty, low-down electorate. Democrats are walking around saying that Republicans are all fascists. Joe Biden gets to say Mitt Romney is going to put you all in chains. And Trump says, yeah, yesterday she said she was Indian. Today she says she's black. Tomorrow she could say whatever it is. And we're going like, no, be nice, do this at a higher level. Have this conversation substantively. Well, Trump cannot have substantive conversations. This is where he is. This is how he does it. And we misunderstood that there was an appeal to that. And maybe we still misunderstand it. I would love to say what we really need is for Trump to sit down. He did this interesting thing last night at his rally speech. He had this rally in Pennsylvania. And he went into this bizarre riff in the middle of the speech about his speechwriters. I have these speechwriters, and they're wonderful. Scott and somebody, I can't remember. He didn't use their last names. And they write wonderful words for me. And they're beautiful, beautiful, wonderful words. But I get worried you're going to be bored, he said to the crowd. I think it's boring. I think you're going to get to be bored. So, about 75% of the time, I just say whatever it is that I want to say. I mean, the speech is over there on the teleprompter, but it's rolling. But I get bored and I say whatever I want to say. That was very, like, in that weird stream of why he said it, why he did it, I have no idea. But it was Trump saying in some message directly to this conversation we're having, you want me to have an elevated, set, consistent, logical argument that I'm going to go at Kamala Harris with, in which I'm going to say, this is why these ideas are bad. This is why that idea is bad. This is why the other idea is bad. And that's boring. What's not boring is when I say she's a communist, which is what he said 5 times last night. And she wants to bring communism to the United States. So we can sit here and say, here's a really good way for him to have a Marquis of Queensberry fight against Kamala Harris that will be appealing to suburban voters who don't like this kind of vulgarity, and he'll win enough of them to take Michigan by 100,000 votes, and he'll do okay in Montgomery County in Pennsylvania, and he'll do this, and he'll pull to the inside straight and all that. And he is just not going to do that. And it is his instinct, as one of the few people who's won the presidency, that that's not what you want from him. That's boring. And what he promises is not to be boring. I have to say, that rally speech I listened to, and by the way, I've now spoken to a couple of people who also listened to it who disagree with me, so I could be wrong. I thought it was excruciatingly boring. It sounded to me like the convention speech, like that second half of the convention speech. I was having a lot of trouble paying attention. I didn't like where he was, I was like, whoa, what? And now he's bringing on the woman who puts up the video, the chart that saved his life on the video screen for 5 minutes. Like, what the hell? I don't know what the hell is going on. That was what struck me. As I say, other people thought he was good, so maybe I'm wrong. I'm often wrong about that. It's hard to judge the performance of a performer you don't like, right? I know whether Harry Styles has given a good concert? I don't like Harry Styles.
But I think one of the challenges right now, and it's why everyone should still be cautious till after Labor Day. That's the sort of rule. And our friend Mark Halpern keeps gently reminding the readers of his newsletter, like, calm down. We can't make any predictions yet. But one of the things that I've noticed is that for now, look, she's been running for 10 days. She has not answered more than one direct question from a member of the press. She has not been given anything but adulation and praise from the press. So the question becomes, can they keep that up for another 100 days till the election? If they can, she'll likely win. But at some point, she might actually have to go off script. She might have to respond. If they have a debate, I think she'll be prepared, but she might get rattled by Trump in that setting. We haven't actually seen her be a real candidate to doing actual retail politics. We've seen her scripted with her teleprompter at big rallies that have been organized, and where half the people are there to see Megan Thee Stallion, not to see Kamala Harris. So I think it remains to be seen if she's agile in the way that I think a lot of her now sudden fans find her to be, because 6 months ago, they thought she was an albatross, and now she's, the second coming of Obama. So I
want to talk about Boll and Branch, and I want to talk about your negative perception of the campaign. But look, it's very important that you think about getting yourself some Boll and Branch sheets, because it is hot out there. And you know what they do? They provide you with the kind of bedding that makes it more comfortable to sleep in these dog days of summer, with sheets that are woven to allow airflow, feel cool and crisp to the touch. Amazing options for hot sleepers. Choose from a 100% organic cotton percale that's made with naturally cooling weave, or their linen, which is made from European flax to be light, airy, and softer than soft. These sheets, the signature hem sheets from Boll and Branch, are bestsellers for a reason. Buttery to the touch, super breathable, made with 100% organic cotton, using the highest quality thread on earth, and they come in 10 versatile colors and sizes, from twin up to California King. Loved by millions of sleepers, they fit the deepest of mattresses labeled with top and bottom tags, so making your bed is easier than ever. And best of all, Boll & Branch gives you that 30-night worry-free guarantee with free shipping and returns on all U.S. orders. So get your coolest, most comfortable sleep with Boll & Branch. Get 15% off plus free shipping on your first set of sheets when you use promo code commentary at BOLLANDBRANCH.com. That's Boll & Branch. BollandBranch.com, promo code commentary for 15% off plus free shipping. Exclusions apply. See site for details. Now, Abe, you said you got the feeling that his campaign is falling apart. Let me just cite to you polling from Public Opinion Strategies, which is a Republican-aligned firm that just came out this morning, which I, of course, I now have to pull it. I say these things and it's like, wait, I don't have it here. That's bad. So where on earth did
now
I
you're being
put
like
it?
Trump, giving the meta rundown of how you present
Right. Okay. Well,
your
basically,
speech to the audience.
Okay. Top GOP polling firm, Public Opinion Strategies. Pennsylvania, Harris 48, Trump 45. Wisconsin, Harris 48, Trump 46. Michigan, Harris 45, Trump 45. Nevada, Trump 46, Harris 45. Arizona, Trump 48, Harris 43. Now, if she can win Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan, she's pretty much at 270. So if she's at 270, it's 270, 270. If she's winning all of this, if this is where she is now, and granted, we literally have 95 days before the election, so this is like the top of the third inning. Okay, so it's not like she's ahead by 12 runs, right? Which is when you can say in a baseball game, it's pretty unlikely someone is going to catch up. That's like Clinton versus Dole. Clinton's up 15 points on Dole in August. He's not coming back, right? Even whatever you're going to say, it's a 1-point race or a 2-point race. But in the polling averages, by the end of this week, she will be ahead of him. Remember, as Matt Continetti says, Biden was not ahead of Trump. Trump was ahead of Biden from September 2023 onward. Biden never got above Trump for almost a year. She's in 10 days, sugar high. She's going to be ahead of him. So, Abe, you're not saying this is a sugar high. You're seeing something else happening.
Well, it's a sugar high, but it can last if you keep eating the sugar, right? And the idea for the Kamala camp, for Democrats and for the media who want her in, is to run down the clock, to go as long as they can without having to veer from the sugar high, without having to give substance, without having to offer something nutritious instead of the sugar. And she's going to be forced to veer from that path a little bit, but she can dole out the quote substance in small pieces and then cruise for longer periods again. She'll do some sort of interview and then she'll sort of retreat for a long time behind the fanfare, and she can do another. So I think the Trump campaign is in trouble. You say it's
but
the
you
top
said
of the,
the Trump campaign is falling apart.
Yes.
So let's talk about the Trump. You're talking about Harris.
Can I just add one thing to
Okay.
what Abe said that we should consider about the media's role here? Because there have been a few stories trickling out here and there that show a lack of self-awareness on the part of the journalists who wrote them, but are very revealing to the public's understanding of how she's being treated. She has spent the last several years actively cultivating particularly female journalists in the mainstream media. She has them to her vice president's mansion. She takes them to she has done a very concerted campaign to make all these people who are going to be writing about her now and are writing about her now feel like they're in the know and the inside bubble that Kamala has created. And she did that in part because there was a vacuum on the part of the Biden administration. He was definitely not doing that. He was not allowing journalists close at all for obvious reasons. But that goes a long way. Journalists like to feel like they have
And they
this
were
insight.
dumping on her.
And they were.
And
exactly.
the Biden West Wing
Right.
was using her as a baby.
Right.
Like it was saying, she's so terrible.
Right. And the
She can't
journalist,
run for
she's
president.
right.
Ooh, she's
Right.
so bad. I mean, my God, she's terrible. Like that. Now that we look back, we can see that as part of the cover up for Biden's strategy. I
Yes.
think without question that
Yes.
they were trashing her to prevent the conversation that led to her becoming the presidential nominee from beginning at all.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay, Abe. So the Trump campaign has a problem in Harris. It's a new thing. How do you solve a problem like I'm going to say Kamala because it rhymes with Maria, even though I know it's Kamala. How do you solve a problem like that? But then there is the campaign itself and what it's doing. And I think you're feeling trouble.
Well, yeah, I'm just they don't have a handle on that question. They don't have a good answer. Like you said, it's the top of the third inning, but actually the Trump is now facing a different team. He has a different opponent. It's actually it's a new game, is what it is. The first two innings were played against Joe Biden, and just as Biden made it, I think, almost a lock for Trump to be able to win. He seems to have to be returning the favor to Kamala, and he's got to change course. There's nothing in his arsenal that is working to me against her, and I don't know. By the way, we should also talk about this is part of the problem here. What he said about J.D. Vance yesterday.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Talk about damning with faint praise. That was
when asked about whether J.D. Vance would be ready on day one. Trump, John, you may remember more particularly what he said, but he said I respected him for years and this, but vice presidents don't matter. Right. Vice presidents aren't very important. Which, by the way, in some sense gets Kamala Harris off the hook for Joe Biden, right?
Exactly. That's what I thought when he said that. That's exactly what I thought.
If vice presidents are irrelevant, then how can you tag her with Joe Biden's policy?
Yeah. Well, why doesn't he just start out every rally listing the name?
Don't ever say why doesn't he?
I know,
but
I can't help myself
because he won't.
Well, he won't. But there are she's an interesting puzzle, right? Because I think that Abe's absolutely right. To say that vice presidents don't matter means it's harder to tar her with the policies of the Biden administration, which, by the way, remember, was the Biden-Harris administration from day one. Always Biden-Harris, always Biden-Harris. She wanted that, and now she should own it.
We did it.
So how about the names of every single American citizen who's been killed by an illegal immigrant since Joe Biden became president? Just list them. How about the names of the Americans still held hostage in Gaza? How about all of these? How about the name of the female boxer in Italy who just had to withdraw from her match after a male athlete who was allowed to compete as a female almost clocked her so hard she couldn't go on, which is a policy in women's sports that Kamala Harris supports. There are just a million easy things. Yes. Of course, he won't do it, but his campaign could do it. His super PACs could do it. These messages resonate because they're not about her identity. They're about her record. They're about what she plans to do, what she said she plans to do if she's the president.
Trump, as one of his lawyers once said to me, in explaining how he could be prepared for days for a deposition with hundreds of answers rehearsed, and then go before the people who are deposing him and start lying in 5 minutes about whatever question he's asked, is that Trump thinks 5 minutes ahead. So what he said about J.D. Vance is that vice presidents have virtually no impact on the election. Meaning, if you look at all the stats and this and that, the idea that a vice president brings you a state or will change whatever, that's not true. What does that tell me? So they're saying, is he ready to be president? And Trump's like, I don't care about whether he's ready to be president. I'm only thinking about what's going on between now and November. It's the easiest thing in the world to say. Of course he's ready to be president. Look at this guy. He was a Marine. He was a young man from a chaotic home. He realized he didn't have the necessary discipline. He joined the Marines. He went to college. He did brilliantly. He went to Yale Law School. He did brilliantly. He wrote a book 5 million people have read. He got himself elected to Senate at the age of 37. He's smart. He's able. He's this. I would match him up against anybody in America to be ready on day one to be it's like you. I'm now giving him advice. I don't even think that's advice. That's what you say. What's in his head is, don't worry, he doesn't matter. Don't worry, he doesn't matter. Because his conversation I think that proves is going on inside his councils is, should we get rid of this guy? And the people who don't want to get rid of him, or who are making the argument that they shouldn't because it'll be too chaotic or whatever, are like, look, whatever happens, you'll pick somebody else. It's not going to make a difference. Vice presidents don't make a difference. And we're hearing his internal monologue there about J.D. Vance. So I listened to a very interesting podcast, the Advisory Opinions podcast over at the Dispatch. Sarah Isgur had on some electoral expert who explained why after a nomination it is actually extremely difficult to switch out a vice presidential candidate, because you've submitted papers to states and you would have to revise them, and they're already printing ballots, and I don't know, it's like 34 days or something until people can start requesting ballots for early voting and all of that. I don't know if this is true, because Senator Thomas Eagleton was flopped out 17 days after he was formally nominated as vice president by George McGovern in 1972 and replaced by Sergeant Shriver in some ginned up process. Not that really mattered, because they lost by 25 points. And that was part of the reason, which is another reason maybe you don't want to switch horses this way. I'd say it's worth a shot myself. Vance is clearly a drag. It's all attention to Vance is negative. I don't think he's going to there's going to be a rallying around J.D. Vance effect at all. He's got no natural constituency in anybody, and the natural constituency is Trump's. And if Trump said, look, he came on, he just wasn't ready for love him, want him to be the secretary of the Department of Veterans Affairs. I love him. He's great. But you know what?
Who would he replace him with?
Training.
Who would the replacement be, though?
I don't know. Glenn Youngkin, like the people that he didn't pick that he could have picked. Doug Burgum. I don't care. I'm just saying.
Who wants to be his sloppy seconds, though? Really? I mean, do you want to be Trump's sloppy seconds?
Anybody. Because look, if they can flop her, if they can pull a switcheroo, he can pull a switcheroo. I don't know. I don't care. What the hell? Doesn't matter. But I do think that there are two elements of this campaign. They are off balance because they haven't figured out their line of attack. And as a result, they have every line of attack. Their line of attack is she's a flip-flopper. I don't think, by the way, go ahead.
Well, I think there's another problem that has to do with Trump himself. I think Trump was sharper and more focused when his opponent was Biden, because he has more personal animus involved. Biden beat him. He doesn't think Biden beat him. He wants to show that he can beat Biden. Biden has been the president who beat him in office now for almost a full term, and this was very personal for Trump, and now it's
strictly business. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, but vengeance is his, focuses him, and now he's a little all over the place because but Biden's gone, and that's not the guy that's not the person that he has to beat.
Also, is it not weird that we're not talking about the fact still that there was an attempted assassination on this guy? I still find it odd that it's just as if it never happened in the mainstream press. It doesn't come up that much still. And there's this whole controversy over whether search engines online are trying to make it more difficult to look for that information. You were typing it into Google, it wouldn't come up. If you wrote attempted assassination of TRU, it would say Truman, not Trump. So there's a lot of weird stuff going on there. And I mean, I know he's not bringing it up, but
he's bringing it up.
I mean, I guess he is bringing.
He brought
it
up for 15 minutes last night at the rally.
Okay, I didn't watch that.
Remember, he said, "I'm never talking about this again." In the convention speech, because it's just too painful. I'm going to talk about it once, and I'm never going to talk about it again. And now he talks about it every single day that he possibly can.
It's like the friend who just broke up with someone. Like, I don't want to hear his name.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
All you hear
Yeah.
is his name.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so look, if we wanted to talk about how the press coverage of this campaign once again justifies and merits the fact that you, Christine, write a monthly column criticizing the media.
It's an embarrassment of riches now, right now.
Yeah, I mean, we don't even know where to go. And as the press declines, and as individual elements of the press decline in power and authority, and have really for like 50 years, the incredible echo chamber effect of what I would call general liberal opinion, which is also cultural and not just political, is if anything much stronger and starker, and that the idea that the press has a role to play in preventing the re-election of this threat to democracy who hates the media very much present in everything. So we could talk about that till the cows come home. It's like complaining about the weather right now for Trump. So that's why I say I'm not sure that while the campaign doesn't know what to do, I'm not sure that, going back to Trump's animal cunning, that injecting the question of the Democratic Party's embrace of identity politics isn't something that has a long-term effect that will be part of the conversation in the election, that the press will attempt to suppress, but that it will be unable to suppress. Now I want to say something nice about America, if I could, just for a minute. There is a story in the New York Times about the campaign against the vice presidential candidacy of Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro, a Sabbath-keeping Jew. And the story, which is, like a press release that Shapiro himself could have written, so take it as it comes, has one very interesting detail in it that reminded me why I love America, even as we're talking about DI and all this. There's a petition being circulated by the Democratic Socialists of America, which is the group that, from which AOC emerged and is this, figure on the radical, this once almost dead organization on the radical left, founded by Michael, the socialist political scientist Michael Harrington, sociologist, and had this big surge because AOC sort of came out of it and then won 15,000 votes in a primary and became the most important person in the history of America. So they and a couple of other groups are circulating a petition saying Shapiro should not be the vice presidential nominee because of his views on, basically because they're anti-Semites, but we'll say that they say it's because of his views on Israel and various other things. And that petition to date has 850 signatures on it, according to the New York Times. In a country of 333 million people, there were 850 people willing to affix their signature to a document that says that a Jewish man should not be the vice presidential nominee of the Democratic Party. I've been saying since this conversation began that I did not think that she would pick Shapiro because there might be a risk in picking a Jewish person, particularly given her own exoticism. Maybe she needs somebody more plain vanilla as a balance. And that's not even a racial thing. Like, she's half Indian, half black. Country's 74% white. Just pick a white guy. Maybe people think Jews are white. It's a whole other conversation we can have. So Shapiro can play that role. As a complicated question, I don't think a lot of people in America say, well, I mean, I'm just like Josh Shapiro because, he doesn't use electricity on the Sabbath. But it's so heartening, like this fact of the failure of this petition is just, it's like something I really desperately needed to hear as we are going into August, and we're already hearing about things ginning up on college campuses with Students for Justice in Palestine at the University of Wisconsin at Milwaukee, saying that they're going to harass Hillel, which is the organization that has, places where Jews can go have Friday night dinner and have services if they don't go to synagogue and have a place to meet and, it's a fraternal organization not affiliated with the university, not connected to the university, and various other places. You guys have any thoughts about this?
Well, I'm glad it made you feel better, and I'd say enjoy it while you can, because
Abe bringing the pain.
Well, I mean, when the pro-Hamas mobs reconstitute fully on campuses, I think there's going to be a lot more than 800 something names affixed to probably multiple letters saying the same thing about Josh Shapiro. And yeah, I don't think we can breathe easy on that front yet.
I'm not breathing easy.
Well, and if she picks him, watch for, remember there was a whole campaign about, genocide Josh. Those people will show up at the DNC convention and really be galvanized perhaps to make a lot of mess there.
Or will they? Because maybe the reason that people aren't signing that petition is the reason that she is as unexpectedly strong as she is, which is to say the hunger to get rid of Trump no longer interfered with by the doorstop of Joe Biden in Democratic minds. Like, what am I can't vote for this guy. Or we can really win. Whereas there was some point in, not just after the debate, but maybe 3-4 months before the debate, where Democrats were like, I don't know if we can win. I don't know. Like, he just got convicted of 34 felonies and the polls aren't changing and he raised $150 million. I don't think we can win. Now they really think they can win. And being the turd in the punch bowl on the left may not be as attractive. We look at them and we say, look, they think there's not a dime's worth of difference between the parties, and Joe Biden is Genocide Joe and Josh Shapiro is Genocide Josh. But maybe there are only 1,000 of them in the country who actually are willing to put their money where their mouth is where this is concerned. Which, by the way, would then also retrospectively highlight that we were right, that the Biden campaign panicking over the uncommitted campaign and how people were mad at him in Dearborn, Michigan, was foolishness and Narishkeit, because those people have no power and they have no authority, and they weren't going to lose him Michigan. What was going to lose him Michigan was that he was non compos mentis. But since they couldn't acknowledge what actually was wrong with their own candidate, they externalized it and said, well, they don't like him because of the policies he's pursuing in the Middle East. And those we can change. What we can't change is his sundowning. What we can change is he needs to be in Delaware 3 days a week, sleeping in the basement or whatever. That they can't change. But policy toward Gaza, they could change.
Speaking of policy, when's the last time Joe Biden made any sort of public statement? Or I do feel like the
Supreme Court thing, right?
Supreme Court
Monday.
thing, right?
So that was 4 days ago.
But the missing presidency is also an interesting moment, because there's obviously still a lot of not just global conflict and upheaval going on, but we're in the middle of an election. He's obviously been told not to campaign on Kamala's behalf, at least at the beginning.
He is, according to what we hear, which is, I think, absolutely astonishing. So conventions run 4 nights. He, the sitting president of the United States, is getting night 1. Night 1 is going to be the night dedicated to the wondrous glories of the Biden presidency.
He gets his
and
big
his speech.
send-off. Yeah.
Monday. That's like the time trials at the Olympics. That's like when they're broadcasting in the middle of Saturday afternoon in June.
They're unburdening themselves of what has been.
Yes, exactly. He gets ping pong tournament hours.
The memory holding of him is kind of this really is. We are seeing something in real time that shows why Stalin was why the purges were so effective. And that was 80 years ago. They were just like cutting things out of encyclopedias with scissors.
But who's
like,
running the country now? That's I'm not asking that facetiously.
Okay, but we're back to who was running the country 6 months ago.
Exactly. And I think it's very important that we not only because I think it implicates Kamala Harris and her campaign for president, as it should, because she's the one who is constitutionally required to step in if the president isn't able to do his job. And she clearly saw him not doing his job and was barely meeting with him. But it's the fact that we're going to have this moment in history where that question might remain unanswered. How are we going to find out what was going on during these past several years? And I think it's important that we do, because it speaks to how our institutions have become kind of deeply corrupted, not just the media for not reporting on it, but the executive branch of our federal government.
This is where I think Abe's theory that she can go to November without a serious test, it maybe meets reality, because they tried to hide Biden's infirmity from the American people, and they failed. 66% of the public knew 2 years ago that Biden should not be running for a second term. They said, no, everything, oh my God, so I can't keep up with him. Geez, the energy. I'm Karine Jean-Pierre, and he exhausts me with his, all that stuff. And not everybody, but enough people in this country went, oh, what are you kidding me? Look at that guy. What are you joking? Now, Kamala's not him. Kamala doesn't have obvious infirmities. But Kamala has to run for president. And they can do whatever they can to make her not have to run for president and just stand there and, be, whatever she's supposed to be, the total Rorschach test, so that no one questions her, so she can take any position or change her positions or whatever. And I just don't think our system can tolerate that for too long. They'll try to do it.
But when we say they, so we're so much, Biden's teams and supporters. No. But my argument is they didn't fail to hide it. They were doing fine. He blew it. He came out.
I'm going to debate you. Come on.
But the lesson is keep your candidate hidden.
Right.
And that's what they're doing.
Lock her up for real. Like, don't let her out there, like, talking to people. Yes.
Okay. Very quickly, an amazing story just across the transom from the New York Times about how Ismail Haniyeh, the political director of Hamas, was killed in Tehran. And just to give you a sense of how formidable the Israelis can be when they choose to be formidable, it appears, according to Ronan Bergman, Mark Mazzetti, and Farnaz Fasihi, that he was assassinated on Wednesday by an explosive device covertly smuggled into the Tehran guest house where he was staying 2 months ago. Now, so this is like the Blair House, I guess. This is the Blair House of Tehran. This is the nicest place you can put somebody up who's a friend of the regime, or they know this is where he stays, or something like that, or they know this is where they would put him up to stay. They let this story out, in my view, the Israelis, not only because they want to brag a little because of what an amazing operation this is, but a lot of what is going on here is telegraphing to the Iranians that, now I'm going to get into my favorite science fiction project of the last 5 years, like the Sophons in the three-body problem, they know everything that is going on inside Iran, and maybe everything that is going on inside that regime. And that there is not a thing they can think, there is not a thing they can do, there is not a move that they can make, that the Israelis, that they don't have reason to think the Israelis might have compromised, penetrated, or understand. So when the Ayatollah Khamenei says Iran is going to strike Israel, maybe Israel has means to retard that strike that it has yet to reveal. But better be careful when you say you are going to strike us directly. And Bibi Netanyahu did say this morning, things are going to be rough in the next couple of days. This is a very dark time. This is dark time, and we're going to have to respond or whatever. But as a friend of mine, just not to be vulgar, but it's such a great line I have to use it. A friend and a contributor to the magazine just texted me, if Tehran were any more penetrated, it would be a porn film. And that is Israel's secret sauce, and it is very serious, and it is an important moment because clearly Biden and Harris and everybody in the Democrat does not want there to be a massive world conflict in the Middle East erupting while they're trying to create this era of good feeling that will launch her into the White House. And that's why another friend of mine said, I think we look at this and we think, well, America's maybe not going to involve itself in the retaliation because it doesn't want to spark a wider regional conflict. It would be involved in regional conflict, but that no, maybe it will act relatively similarly to the way it acted when Iran fired those 340 missiles after the assassination that Israel practiced 3 months ago, because it doesn't want that. And it wants to stop Iran where it is and actually retard the Iranian advance so that things can remain quiet and help Israel reestablish, at least temporarily, a certain level of deterrence so that Kamala Harris does not have to show that she is ready on day one to be president of the United States in the middle of a crisis where she is effectively now the president of the United States, even though she isn't, because she is the Democratic nominee for president. Everything that Biden does is now her. So anything, and he clearly doesn't know what the hell is going on. So there may be Israel signaling that it knows what Iran is up to, and it's hearing every word that is coming out of the mouths of the Iranians and their most private counsels, and that they will therefore know what the Houthis are up to. They'll know what Hezbollah is up to. They'll know what Hamas is up to, and they'll know what the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps is up to. So maybe stand down Ayatollah Khamenei, and then maybe the Americans are like, we better reassemble the coalition of the shooting down, because this is going to be really bad for us if it would be very bad for us, but it would be very bad for the re-election campaign or the election campaign if the Middle East were to go up in flames.
Yeah, I think that's right, and I also just love that they released that Israel let this out, because you have to have now all the leadership in Tehran going through every official building looking for everything forever. I mean,
yeah,
it so undermines their ability to function on any kind of war footing, that I think it's great.
Well, it's turned them all into Iranian nuclear scientists, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're
Right.
who have known for a long time they always have targets on their back, as well they should. So now
Right.
it's the regime.
Okay.
I'm an old man who does nothing but analogize things to Francis Ford Coppola movies, so I will do this again. The conclusion of The Conversation, the great 1974 movie with Gene Hackman as the guy who bugs people's apartment, listens to what's going on. The movie ends with Gene Hackman being convinced now that someone has bugged his apartment, and the climactic scene of the movie is Gene Hackman tearing his own apartment apart, pulling up the floorboards, breaking through the walls, because he's looking for bugs to see if they can track him down and trace him. And in the end, he is huddled in a corner, having not found anything, in a fetal position, playing the saxophone, which is the only thing that can calm him down. And that's how the movie ends. And yes, it would be delightful to know that Harry Call, the character played by Gene Hackman in The Conversation, is the model for the way the Ayatollah Khamenei and his malocracy is now behaving in the wake of this revelation. When people were saying yesterday and the day, how on earth did they do the strike? How did they do it? How did it happen? Well, we still don't know how it happened, but what we know is don't mess with the Israelis. Maybe don't mess with the Israelis would be a good policy. Anyway, Abe, you have a recommendation.
Yeah, so this is almost a part two, because I made a recommendation some time ago on the podcast. I recommended the Netflix documentary series Homicide. This is Homicide New York, created by Dick Wolf, and that was fantastic. It went into high-profile, ugly, really interesting homicide cases in New York, and you sort of they talk to the detectives on the cases that walk you through the whole process. Some cases, the cases go cold, and there's a new detective who just looks at it years later and gets on the trail and uses new technology. Anyway, season 2 is out now, and it's Homicide Los Angeles, and it is essentially the same model as the Homicide New York. They deal with Los Angeles County homicide detectives, and they're going through each episode is a high profile homicide case. Well, not they're not actually all high profile. That's not right. They're all interesting, but they start with the Phil Spector, Lana Clarkson case, which that sort of delayed my watching it because I'm very familiar with that case already, and I didn't want to have to get walked through it all over again. But it's so good that was great.
Can I ask a quick question about this?
Mm-hmm.
There is a certain body of opinion,
Mm-hmm.
as is true of all high-profile murders, that suggests that he didn't do it. Is there any exploration of that idea, or is that just
there's
craziness?
there's only the exploration of the idea that before the cops had sufficient evidence, they kept that in their minds as a possibility, that either it was suicide or an accident or homicide, and the I think the positioning of the gun ruled out. Well, I don't want to give away too much. Ruled out one of those automatically, and then they were sort of down to two. And from what I know about the case, and it's not my life's work, but I know a bit about it. I don't think it's remotely possible that he didn't do it. There's almost an eyewitness. I mean, there's a driver.
Okay.
Around anyway.
All right.
So it's just a great show. They go through that. Then there's the case of the race car driver Mickey Thompson and his wife, who were gunned down in their driveway. This gets solved many years later. Someone comes out of the woodwork, and then there are cases that are not high profile but fascinating. And it goes through all the highs and lows in terms of on the economic scale of Los Angeles County, which, as they emphasize on the show, is so vast that it involves, so they're dealing with homicide cases among the very richest of us and among the poorest, and it's just a great, interesting show, and you get to know, as with the New York version, you really get to sort of love these homicide detective personalities. There's something very endearing about listening to them explain how and why they do what they do.
My knowledge of the Hollywood homicide or the LA homicide detectives comes entirely from the Michael Connelly novels and the TV show Bosch, where the homicide detective lives in a Nutra house in the Hollywood Hills that must be worth $10 million for reasons that are never entirely made clear. I assume that is not actually the way that most LA homicide detectives live, but it does make it fun to watch Bosch so that you can live in a Nutra house while he's, investigating terrible, terrible crimes in LA, I have to say. I don't know why I brought that up, because I'm old. I said I was old. I'm making reference to 50-year-old movies. I'm talking about Nutra houses in LA, and you're talking about LA Homicide on Netflix, which you are strongly recommending. We will be back tomorrow. For Abe and Christine, I'm John Podhoretz. Keep the candle burning.